Welcome back to Recruiter.com. In this next video on pivot tables, we're going to continue going through our real-life examples of making small, simple summaries. Okay, so in the last video, we were able to complete these first 6, and then now let's go ahead and complete these next few. And notice right away that we're going away from doing the sums, and now we're going to count and average. So let's first start on this count of sales transactions. And so when we come into here, we need to strip out a lot of things. We need to pull out project, we need to pull out company name, we need to pull out description and fiscal year. And we're still using sales, so I want to have my account name in there. But this time, instead of saying sum of amount, it's saying count of sales transactions. So you see how it says here, sum of amount? Well, we want to do a count. So how many transactions have we had so far? And we can change this by simply left clicking. You don't need to be on this arrow. You can be simply just right here on the left side, and we can come up to value field settings. Now you can get to this option either right there, or you could simply just select on the amount or sum of the amount here, and then come into analyze. And then on the analyze part of the ribbon, you can see field settings. So field settings, that's exactly what we were clicking on over here, value field settings. So the same dialog box will appear either way. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to summarize our values. Remember, this is a summary. We're taking the details from the 10 years worth of data and summarizing it. And it's saying right now, it's summing it. And instead of summing it, our manager has asked us to count how many sales transactions we have had. So let's go ahead and count that and hit OK. And how this is reading now is that over the past 10 years, we have had 9,360 sales transactions. If we want to switch it to see how many payroll transactions, we can do that simply by switching to payroll expense. And the same thing, 9,360. So let's flip this back to sales transactions, hit OK. So we're done with that one, so check that off. The next thing is the count of sales transactions by company and by year. So we're adding company and year in here. So we need to find our company name. And right now we have all these filters on here. So actually let's clear all these filters quickly from our previous examples. Just come in here, clicking on that filter button, and it's popping over, and I'm just gonna hit clear. And same thing with the project name, clear that, and that looks good. Okay, so now we're back to grabbing our company name and year. So like we've done before, there's less company names than there are years. So let's have those float across the top columns and then put the fiscal years down the rows. And here is how everything tallied up. We have in 2007, for Recruiter Capital, there are 326 sales transactions that happened here that meet at this intersecting point. In 2010, 303 sales transactions happened for Recruiter Development. So this is the count of our sales transactions. Let's go ahead and complete this one. Now our boss is saying, hey, I want to know the count and the sum of the sales by company, by customer, by year, and by project. And that's basically saying, do what we did at the very end of the sums, but add a count to it. So let's go ahead and make this real quick. We need to add in customer and project. So our customer is in the description short. Let's put that at the bottom. And then let's grab our project and throw that into the columns. Now there's a lot of data going on here right now, so let's filter this down so that we can see it a bit nicer. Let's start with the column labels, and let's just look at one company. This time, instead of Recruiter Capital, let's go ahead and look at Recruiter Management. Hit OK. And then let's look at one project. Let's look at San Francisco. I'm going to switch this over from the company name into the project name. So I'm going to drop this down, project name. This will give me my unique fields. Pull in just San Francisco. And now we have that unique list. Here are all of our customers. Now the next thing was that we need to have not just the count, but the sum of the sales. So we need to actually grab this amount one more time and duplicate it. But this time, you see how it was count at first. Now it says sum of amount. So I actually don't have to change anything. It's working perfectly for us. So let's come on over here, take a look at what we've got. We've got one customer here that made one sale, and it was for $88,840 in 2006. So now, like we did in the past, let's go ahead and filter just for the top 5 customers that we have here. So let's drop this down, and on our value filters, making sure that we are within the description short, we want to filter on our top 5 And I actually screwed this up in the previous video where we should have been sorting this or filtering this for the bottom 5 because we are working with negative and we want to start with the lowest negative. So we actually would have wanted to start with bottom instead of top. So be careful of that, as it's easy to do to switch those up. And let's do the bottom 5. And instead of count of amount, let's switch this to the sum of the amount. So we're going to look at this column and not the counting column. Let's hit OK. And now we have the top 5 customers here. So we have this customer spent $150,000 on just 2 transactions. And this one here that spent $137,000 on 3 transactions. And when I'm looking over here, I kind of want to get rid of both of these subtotals. So we can either right click and say remove the grand total, or we can go to the design tab on the ribbon and go into grand totals. And so right now we have these grand totals summing up the rows going across. So we actually don't want the row grand total here. We want to keep the column grand total, these 2 columns. So we want to say that we only want to keep on the columns only. So I'm going to click on that, and that will then get rid of here. Let's go ahead and scooch this in to get rid of that extra space. And let's test this out. Let's just make sure that we're working correctly. So BM customer has 3 transactions that amounted to $137,962. If I double click any of these numbers, it will show me the transactions that are actually adding up to this. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to double click, and Excel created a brand new worksheet. You can see it says sheet 2 here. And if I scroll into it a little bit closer so we can see it better, there are 3 transactions, 1, 2, 3. And when I go ahead and I sum it up with Alt equals, you'll notice that it equals that same amount of $137,962. Let's flip back, control page down, and you'll see $137,962. So it makes sense that we have 3 transactions and that they total up to this amount. Let's put this in sorting order quickly. So let me pop down and change it to the description sort. We want to go to more sort options, and we want to say ascending and the sum of the amount. Hit OK. So now we have it sorted from lowest to highest. Okay, so that one's complete. Let's pop into average value of sales transactions. So we're going back to the beginning. We're going to need to strip out a bunch of stuff. So let's get rid of my sum. Let's get rid of my project. Let's get rid of my company. Get rid of the description. Get rid of fiscal year. And now we're back to sales and the count of those sales. This time, we want to see what is the average value of each sales transaction. So I'm going to need to switch this using my value field settings. So again, you can click here, or you can select on the actual value, one of these values, or see how it says count of amount. If you're selected in any one of these, notice that Excel is telling us what the active field is, count of amount. If I switch it over here, the active field is now account name, which you can see here in the quadrant. So when I hit field settings, Excel brings up the wrong thing. Excel is looking at my account name. It doesn't give me the option to change it from sum or count or average. That's why I need to be selected on this side where the count of amount or count of amount here is, and making sure that it's listed in my active field as count of amount up in this header on the ribbon. And then I can click into field settings and change this from sum, count, and now to average. Hit OK. Our average sales amount over the last 10 years is $32,900. Let's go ahead and check that one off. Let's pop into this next one. We want to see it by year. All we got to do is throw in the year, fiscal year. So let's pop up to FY, and let's populate it going downward. And actually right now we are filtered from the previous example, so 2016 is only showing up. Let's pop down into fiscal year and select all. Okay, here are the averages per year. Notice that these numbers are getting bigger or stronger negatives, which is larger sales. And that's a good thing. So our company is growing each year. But overall, if we average the last 5 years, we get 32,900. That's the exact same thing that we get also down here when we select it all. We can just verify that that is calculating correctly. Now let's go ahead and do this last one. We have to do all 3 of them now. Average value, the count, and the sum of sales by customer, by year, and by project. So the only thing that we took out this time in comparison to this one is we took out by company, but we added in average value. So let's make this happen. So we're going to come in here. Let's put in first all of our amounts. So we're going to have 3 amounts in here. One will be for summing, one will be for averaging, and one will be for counting. So let's do it in this order. Average, count, sum. I'm just going to click on these. I find it easier. So I can go to value field settings. This is going to be count. Okay. The last one will be sum. So I've got this correctly. So I've got the average, the count, the sum. Notice too, if you wanted to go ahead and change this value field setting, you could just double click right here and that same window pops up. Just remember that if you double click on a value, that you're going to be getting an additional sheet to show us the detail of this value. Okay, so we have the first couple of things done. We have the average, count, sum, and we have by year, we need to have customer and project to be added in here. So customer is the description short that's going to go over here. And then we're going to have project. So I'm going to grab my project name and I'm going to pop that into my columns. Notice how this is reading now. I've got my average of amount for my San Francisco project because I'm still filtered on San Francisco. Then I've got my count of all the sales for my San Francisco project. Then I have the sum of it for my San Francisco project. Let's go ahead and filter this so that we're just looking at the fiscal year of the current year. And notice that whenever I click into here, it always goes to the field name that I'm selected on. So account name is selected because I am currently on this column header. Had I been over here on 2016 and then I pop in, it now is in fiscal year when I click on that filter button. If I go into sales, it should be into the account name. If I click on a customer and then go over here, it's going to be in the description short. So if you want to save yourself a step, just click on the correct element and then click into the filter to then put it on 2016 only. Okay. So then the last thing, I'm going to select on one of the customers and let's do the top 5 for here as well. So value filters, top 10. Remember that we've got to actually go down. So let's do bottom and let's do it for the sum of the amount and hit OK. So how this reads right here is that for all of the companies, because we don't have any of the companies specified in here, so for the entire umbrella of 3 companies, we have average sales of $52,000 for our San Francisco project in 2016. And these are the top 5 customers that made those sales for this project. Here are the count of how many sales that these customers had. Then if we multiply 5 times the average, we should get the total amount. So let's go ahead and do that over here. We can say equals this times this and hit enter. And you can see that that's the same amount. One thing I want to point out right here is that typically you'd want to just hit Control C, hold Shift down arrow a couple times, and then hit Control V to paste it in. This is the bad feature, in my opinion, where you have to work around this formula that was automatically written for us. It's this get pivot data, and it has its own place and time to be used, but not right here. So what we have to do to make this work correctly and easily is let's pop into the pivot table, go to the Analyze tab, and click the down arrow on the options and say, uncheck this generate get pivot data. So let's go ahead and uncheck that. And now let's rewrite this formula. So let's say equals this times this. Notice that my formula is only H8 times I8. Hit enter, then Control C, Control Shift down, Control V to paste it. All right, so that wraps it up for all the sales pivot tables.